Keir Starmer has literally received the worst news of his entire tenure. Yes, I know it sounds crazy, but his decisions have led to arguably the biggest shift in his whole 4 months at the helm. It's seriously not looking good for him now. We will discuss the full story, whilst also going over all of the latest news from up and down the country. But first, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel and join our fast-growing community. Just a quick one to say we have new Stuck Farmer t-shirts available on our store. Go grab them now. They are available at britishstand.com or check the link in the description. The Conservatives have taken a 2-point poll lead over Keir Starmer's Labour Party in Kemi Badenoch's first week as leader. The new Tory leader has taken the party to 29% of the vote, according to pollsters More in Common, with Labour behind on just 27%. It is the highest rating for the Conservatives since February. It marks a remarkable fall from grace for Labour, which in July was elected to power in a landslide victory over Rishi Sunak's Conservatives. Then, Labour won a 174-seat majority on 34% of the vote, while the Tories suffered their worst election defeat in history. But, as the fallout from Rachel Reeves's historic £40 billion tax grab grows, Labour's poll rating has continued to fall, and just days after succeeding Mr Sunak as Tory leader, Ms Badenoch is enjoying a bounce. Her net approval rating sits at -3, compared with Keir on -25 points. However, just 1 in 3 people say they are familiar with Ms Badenoch, More in Common found. It is just the latest poll to show a boost for Ms Badenoch and the Conservatives since she beat Robert Jenrick in the contest to replace Mr Sunak. It comes as Sir Keir's government faces a mourning backlash over the budget's inheritance tax raid on farmers and the increase in employer contributions to national insurance. Thousands of farmers are set to descend on London later this month in protest against the government's extension of inheritance tax, which they say will threaten the UK's food security and lead to the closure of family farms. The party has been accused of traumatising farmers with the tax grab, which will mean they have to pay 20% of tax on inherited agricultural assets worth more than £1 million from April 2026. Meanwhile, Britain's biggest business organisations have accused the government of betrayal over budget plans to hike employer national insurance contributions from 13.8% to 15%, despite a manifesto pledge not to increase taxes for working people. The majority of the increase will be passed on to workers through lower wages. Elsewhere in the poll, Nigel Farage's Reform UK continued to gain support, with 19% of the vote, up from 18% at the beginning of November. The Liberal Democrats lost ground, falling from 14% of the vote to 11%, while the Green Party remained flat on 8%. Mr Trial said the distribution of support made the UK look more like a continental country with a proportional representation voting system, not the current first-past-the-post. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments. In some other news, Labour's proposed inheritance tax changes could prove a death sentence for many small and medium-sized farms. New modelling from the Country Land and Business Association, CLA, has revealed. Despite government assurances that small farms won't be affected, the CLA's modelling shows that tax changes could wipe out farm profits entirely, inviting stagnation and in many cases force sales of land to foot tax bills. The model found a typical 200-acre arable farm in England, owned by an individual with an expected annual profit of £27,300, would face an IHT tax bill of £427,000 in the event of a death. If spread over a period of 10 years, this would require the farm to allocate 159% of its profit each year to cover the tax bill. To meet this bill, successors could be compelled to sell 20% of their land, roughly 40 acres, rendering their farm unviable. This sale would also be subject to Labour's capital gains tax raid, representing a final kick in the teeth for farmers already having to break up land that may have been passing through their family for generations. This comes after former Labour advisor John McTernan told, "We can do to farmers what Thatcher did to the miners. It's an industry we could do without. We don't need small farmers." McTernan's view has drawn fierce criticism online, with many suggesting it highlights Labour's attack on farmers, not a necessary money-raising policy, but an ideological attack driven by the politics of envy, ignorance, vindictiveness, and gross stupidity. Gavin Lane, Deputy President of the Countryland and Business Association, CLA, said, "Either the government isn't being honest with the public about the true impact of these reforms, or they don't understand the nature of rural businesses. I'd like to believe it is the latter, and that they are prepared to listen to our input rather than continually trying to dismiss it. While they frame this as a tax on the wealthy, the reality is that ordinary family farms will be hit just as hard. Asking farms to use their income to pay a huge capital tax bill over 10 years, if indeed it is possible, will threaten the future of investment and the viability of the business." The modelling paints a slightly less catastrophic picture for married farming couples who qualify for further tax reliefs, but it is still bleak. Judicael Hammond, Director of Policy and Advice at CLA, said, "As soon as you hit the 250 acres mark, it will wipe out your profits. DEFRA figures suggest more than 50% of cereals farms are above 250 acres, so this is actually going to hit quite a lot of people." Ms. Hammond also highlighted the Chancellor's belief most farms wouldn't be affected as they can claim extra relief as a married couple was wrong. Those reliefs don't account for personal predicaments. It does not apply to widows, likewise people who die within 7 years. As a result, our members are worrying about dying. No one knows when you will die. Tim Bonner, Chief Executive of rural lobby group the Countryside Alliance, said, "All over the country there are old men and women sitting in farmhouses absolutely terrified that their death will see the end of generations of their family farming their land. I know some of them and cannot overstate the mental anguish this is causing. I'm a great believer in cock-up over conspiracy and do not believe that Rachel Reeves has set out to be deliberately cruel. There must be ways of addressing the avoidance of inheritance tax through agricultural property relief without punishing innocent farmers." However, the figures they employed in the modelling are actually a conservative estimate, as they do not include things like diversified income, farm shops, farm stock, development potential or holiday lets, all of which would push up a farm's value. Roughly 69% of farms diversify in England. This modelling comes as a row between the National Farming Union and the government rumbles on with the latter, claiming only a quarter of farmers will be affected and they'll all be wealthy. But the NFU rejects this, arguing DEFRA's own figures show it will more likely be 2/3 of farms. The CLA highlighted the fact the Treasury figure comes from an analysis of claims under the APR tax scheme, whereas their modelling is derived from actual farms across England. Critics have also taken aim at the paltry amount of money the scheme will raise, £500 million a year by 2030, enough to fund the NHS for 1 day and 5 hours. Labour argues the figure is still crucial in rebuilding the nation's finances after the Conservatives left a £22 billion black hole. Thousands of farmers are set to protest the Chancellor's budget on November 19th. What are your thoughts on what we discussed in today's video? Let me know down in the comments section below. If you've not yet already, make sure you do drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel for more British political content. Thank you, take care, goodbye.